Hi, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another conversation of the Policy Panchayat here. Today we are delving deep into a space which is, I would say, not just most popular, but in a sense accessible to anyone looking to get started in public policy, which is policy research, right? We have a very simplistic picture of it in general, but there's so much of nuance to it as a vertical per se. And today we have two phenomenal individuals who have worked so much in this space and will be walking us through the same. Maybe we'll just start with a quick round of introduction. Why don't we start with you, Akhila?
Okay, thank you so much, Yash, for the opportunity. Hi, everyone. My name's Akhila, and I'm a PhD student at the University of Cambridge. So I work mainly on neurodegenerative disorders, but I also work on global health policy. During my master's year, I got involved with a sort of youth-led think tank called Pologia, and I worked on a couple of briefs. So one for a Cambridge-based charity. I've also worked on a brief on non-communicable diseases and multi-sectoral collaborations for Public Health England. And now I'm sort of moving on to writing briefs on wider policy issues, not just global health. So that's where I'm at the moment. Passing on to Neeraj.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Yash, for giving this opportunity to share my views. Currently, I'm officiating as a director of research at Raisina House. It's a youth-led policy think tank based out of Delhi. And also, I'm pursuing my PhD in international relations, basically on Chinese studies from Sardar Patel University, Gujarat. And prior to that, I have completed my MPhil also in the political science and did my double masters in history and political science. So basically, my research expertise totally lie on the India-China foreign policy, maritime security issues, defense, and I got into this public policy framework when I got enrolled into a GPOTS fellowship. So last year, I was a part of that cohort, and I actually, got very much interest that how this is actually happening and what is the role of the youth through which we can actually, try to contribute some of our inputs into the public policy. So, working towards that, I have also been, writing a few op-eds, research papers for different journals, articles. So this is a brief general introduction about myself. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Neeraj. Thank you so much, Akhila. First questions first, right? And probably the most common questions of them all, that what does a career in policy research look like? Like, we know that there's, say, think tanks. There's that academia space within universities and all. And maybe we can start with Akhila and then move on to Neeraj. But tell us more. What does this space look like? What are the other opportunities here, verticals here, and your take on the same?
Yeah, I think policy research is, like a behemoth, almost like it's, when you look at it from the outside, it feels like it's very difficult to get into. And it is to some extent because, resources are not as clear cut as, traditional disciplines. Like if you wanted to study physics, you know which course to choose. But if you wanted to study policy, especially at an undergraduate level, it's a bit, tricky. You don't know where to get started. So I think, as you mentioned, of course, academia and think tanks are the two main sort of areas where you would get involved in. But also, working with members of parliament, that is another area which is opening up both in India and in UK as well. Like it's, quite common to look at ground level data to understand trends and report that in the context of the, wider political trends or so on that are happening in the world. So I mean, I'm more well versed with academia and with of think tanks as well. So I'll just start off with that. So most policy research is very interdisciplinary in academia. So it's not that you will have, for example, in global health, it's not that you have to have a doctor only. You'll have an epidemiologist. You might have, statistician. So it's multiple disciplines coming together. So anyone can get involved in policy research. But I would say one of the key things you need to do to, start off is you need to be aware of what's happening. So, read up news articles, look at, pick some areas, because if you try to have a very generalized approach, it can get a bit overwhelming. So I would recommend, if you're interested in technology, for example, so start following the trends there. And eventually you can start to look at the political implications of what would happen. So for example, big tech and crypto, governments are struggling to regulate it because it's not like normal currency. So if that's an area that interests you, pick that up. So I would say, like, generally people are subject matter experts, so no one knows everything about all areas, but yeah, that's how it works in academia. With think tanks, it's a bit more difficult to get in. So I mean, that's why I really like the concept of youth-led think tanks, because we are sort of democratizing the space almost. So again, going back to the think tank I was part of, we train our researchers. We give them, what do you need to know about policy frameworks? So again, the eightfold path, which is quite common in public policy. So we talk them through that. We talk about economics, statistics, and again, the subject knowledge usually comes with the researchers because they tend to be mostly from the medical field. But we do have, again, different teams. Like we have anthropologists, we have people who have English literature backgrounds and so on. So there is that level of interdisciplinarity there as well. But with think tanks, like more formalized think tanks, it's a bit more difficult to get into. So I would always recommend, getting the experience prior to wanting to join them so as to make a competitive application. So that would be my take on that. And working with MPs, it's usually in the UK, it is, you start off as a caseworker. You do get access to, data, which is not, I mean, it could be in the public domain. Sometimes, it's mostly within the political parties. And then you try to make sense of it and then, present a brief to the MP and other sort of office members and take it forward from there. So that would be sort of a snapshot from my side.
Neeraj?
Okay, so now if I talk about, like, rightly said by Akhila, that it's a interdisciplinary subject, in the subject, there are so many different subjects which are there. So just to focusing just on the students who are just pursuing their graduation or just planning to be a part of public policy. So I would just say that, first of all, you need to decide what exactly where you want to focus on. Because at this moment, at this level, every undergrad, the college student might be, having the information that would be very much general. And from that general information to coming to the specific subject area interest, that person needs to decide at that point of a time. And then focusing on that point of a time where what all possibilities which are there, like suppose that student is studying in India, he can actually look up for different kind of opportunities which are the think tanks actually they are which they are offering them, and accordingly they can try and pursue their own interest. And I would say the role of a think tank these days, it has very much gone up wider, because its scope has broadened up in a sense, because the youth-led basically the think tanks majorly taking interns. They are every weekends they are discussing on a very new emerging topics, exchanging their views, and then on the form of discussion and exchanging their views, they are actually providing some in the writer form some articles, producing them, and with some collaborating with the embassies. Like I'm with the Raisina House. Our work nature, it's totally just on focusing on the current issues which are happening in the world. And that is how the interest of a student, like students who are having interest in the international relations, foreign policy, they are coming up with the questions, why this is happening, what are the ways, what are the impact on India. So this is how a new kind of a idea is emerging between the students who are actually joining. So this way we are actually formulating some of our new ideas and into the form of discussion, writing papers, and then somehow collaborating with the think tanks, we are actually giving some kind of a recommendation to them that these are some of the areas where things can be done in a right way. So I think this way, this is the best way where students can indulge themselves, and they can be a part of the think tanks. And this is how the policy research framework work can, actually work in a very good way. Thank you.
That's very helpful, Neeraj, Akhila. Maybe I'll straight away get to the elephant in the room, right? So, which is, what does a career in public policy research look like? In the sense, we know that while in college, you can be in initial, let's just say, work as an intern, right, in some sort of research role in these spaces, and get into a career in the sense like work as a analyst or an associate at a think tank, maybe, right? Or maybe pursue a PhD, and of course, that's a whole different ballgame. But apart from that, what is it that I'm missing? What does a career in policy research look like? What are the other avenues or options available? Whoever wants to take it up first. Maybe we start with Neeraj this time.
I would say, this is just up to the level of graduation, post-graduation, or whatever, as the student starts start working with the internship. Then he gets a promotion, then, he gets work as a research associate, research assistant. So many things are happening till PhD, and he's getting a lot of experience and exposure working in the think tanks. Now, the basic point comes here, what exactly the role of that person is. He can work as a young professional, like, in the Ministry of External Affairs, there are very good opportunities which they are actually, taking it out. Niti Aayog is such one institution planning the think tank, where they are actually inviting young professionals to work on a specific area, and that too, once you start working with the actually government think tank, you actually feel that, you are actually working for the people directly. You feel that, these are some of the demands, these are some of the things which, public are demanding, that, some policies need to be framed in this area. And when you actually, as a young professional, work in that area, that focus area, I feel, your focus or your decision of working with the think tanks as at that point gets fulfilled. So I would just, thinking at that point only. But, if, still the student or the candidate who is applied for a young professional, he's still not satisfied, then there is another last resort, is that he can opt for the competitive exam, UPSC, he can go for the Indian Foreign Services, then he can again, get into the MBCs, he can be a diplomat, directly get into the public policy framing, choose his subject area, get into that, and directly, control each and everything in that. So these are some of the two which I think, works in the area of public policy only, and it is very much helpful for the candidates who are actually aspiring to be a part of public policy.
We move on to Akhila.
Yeah, thank you, Neeraj, for some of those points. It prompted some things in my mind as well. So again, looking at more of from an international perspective. So usually it's like start off as an analyst, associate, definitely. But as you move on, there are a number of different, paths that you can take. So one is, again, become a senior researcher at a more established think tank. So you have like Chatham House, which is considered to be the top tier of all of them. So you can do like research fellowships. So they usually expect you to have a PhD for most of them. But you can also work directly, as a government advisor. So if you're okay with the political aspect of it, then that's another opportunity to look at. And also looking at the civil service. So I think Neeraj did mention about UPSC. It is similar in the UK as well. So there are a lot of, they actually call them policy advisors or policy officers. So there is a role within the civil service to, work on specific areas of policy. So usually you get a seconded to a particular department. So it could be, Department of Work and Pensions, Public Health, and so on. And they don't really expect you to have experience in that area of policy, although it is very helpful if you do, and it gives you a step up if you do that. But it is quite open in that sense. Another area which I would like to touch upon is multilateral organizations. So UNDP, WHO, all of them look for policy research because, although they don't have, the power to directly implement, governmental policies, they do, push and do lobby governments to take certain steps. So World Food Program as well, they've been very successful in the recent Ukraine crisis, and I'm sure there's an amount of policy research involved in that. So, I mean, policy research is something, that's transferable. It's not that you have to remain a researcher, throughout. You could also move to adjacent roles where you still use your skills. That would be my take on that.
That's very helpful, Akhila. Just building on that, right? So today, if I want to build a career in the policy research space, right, and just continue on from what you were mentioning already, are there any other skills apart from comprehension and writing? Of course, as I understand that's there. Are there any other skills that I need to focus on? And these can be maybe, I don't know, some technical softwares as well, which I might need to have a grip upon. And yeah, like, what is it that we are missing here? That apart from comprehension skills and writing, what else goes into this if you want to build a career?
Yeah, I can get started with that. So I would say economics is something I would expect every policy researcher to know, because when you don't, propose policies in a vacuum. So, I mean, there are lots of, free resources. I think we were, shown even in the Takshashila course, Marginal Revolution University or something like that on YouTube. So understanding those basic concepts and statistics as well. And you mentioned any technical skills. So SPSS would be a useful software to know. And, subject specific knowledge is also quite important because, there are lots of technical terms. You will be reviewing lots of literature. So some understanding of that would help as well. And I think to build these skills, it's not necessary that you need to do a degree in that particular area. So I am by training a physical scientist / engineer, and I work on global health policy. So you can see that the transition can be made. And I used a lot of online courses, which are not too prohibitively expensive. So you could do that to build your knowledge framework. Apart from that, I think it's key to also have networking skills. So don't be afraid to reach out to people who are more senior and who might be, also mid-level, because they have been in your shoes at some point of time. And, it's important to understand, the inner workings of the space. I mean, this holds good for any industry, but I feel that a lot of undergraduates might think, oh, how can I reach this very important person? And are they going to, listen to me? But you would be surprised that many of them are, they're really passionate about helping young people. And also they want to hear what you have to say, because once you're in the space for some time, you get used to, the same sort of opinions coming around. I wouldn't say it's an echo chamber, but it does happen. So that's another skill, I would say. And also being comfortable with literature review. So it's like, I would say in addition to comprehension. So you should be okay with reading large amounts of papers and also absorbing data. And if you don't understand it, spend some time with it. It's when I read a research paper, even today, I don't understand everything, in the first go. It takes me a couple of days or sometimes even weeks to understand. So be persistent. I think that leads on to the last skill that I would like to highlight, which is persistence. So policy is not an easy space to get into. So you need to, be persistent and resilient. Over to Neeraj.
I think most of the points are, already covered by Akhila, but just want to highlight on just one or two points. First of all, I believe that, any person who is opting for that public policy frame out and he has an interest, so he should be generally aware, what all things are happening, apart from the interest issue, he or she should know what actually, things are happening around in the world, what all government schemes are coming, how the things are working in the area of public policy already. And second thing I want to focus on, like, rightly Akhila also said, outreaching. It's just a one good, kind of a area where, every graduate or interns, everyone should focus on, because, building up a network in this time, it's very important. No matter you have a lot of knowledge, you have a lot of degrees, it is of no use till the time you do not have any network. So this is my personal experience, which I'm sharing with you. And the third point, which is very much important to the skills of a candidate, that is, it's public policy. It's totally a complex subject where, a lot of difficulties would be there, and you need a kind of a temperament where you actually work in that kind of environment where you cannot be easily tired up, right? And if you will be given a work, you should be able to handle up this work, and on the same hand you need to respond to other responsibilities also. So you need to that kind of have that kind of aura inside you that you can do it, and you want to learn, you want to grow, you want to do this for the public, you want to grow more and get exposure. So these are few of the 2-3 things which I think I can highlight and work on. Yeah, I can explain.
Awesome. One thing, and maybe either of you can choose to take this up, but this whole difference between secondary and primary research, right? And I'm assuming that especially within policy, it is far more significant, right? Because primary research, I'm assuming it's a lot of on the ground stuff that people go out and have their surveys and all of that. And secondly, of course, we keep learning from history, so to speak, right? So how do you look at the difference between these two, right? Especially in a policy context, right? And whatever your experience has been with these, and maybe if these need very different skills, if you can add on that.
So I'll take on this. And so, when we talk about all primary source of data and the secondary source of data, the first thing, both of them are very much dependent on each other.
Yeah.
If we will not do the primary source of data collecting, focusing on the government reports which are already published, they have done the kind of a groundwork, we cannot study the secondary source of data. And it is just the vice versa only. And why? Because without studying the secondary source of data, you cannot understand what is the ground reality.
Yeah.
So I believe whenever I get into the research, we all get into the review of literature. What other people have written, what sort of a work they have done, what are their research gaps. We actually focus on that area, and that we only get to know through the to studying the sources of secondary source of data, which we study in the form of papers, books, journal articles, newspaper articles, each and everything. The deck study the first thing which we do, and then only we come to our own original plan of study. What exactly we have to do in a primary source of how we are going to collect the data, because now we understand that this is the area, this is the research gap which is there, and this is how we have to conduct our research in the primary source of data.
Right.
So I think the role of primary source of data and the secondary, they are very important. Both are dependent, and giving it an importance. Secondary source of data, after studying, we can get into the primary source of data. This is both of them. In some of the areas, in my prior experience when I was doing my MPhil, I have done a pilot study, because I was not sure what kind of a sample size I would be focusing on, or what kind of a sample size I would be taking on, kind of a questions. So I just did a small kind of a pilot study survey, and on the basis of that, I got to know that what kind of a public I will be dealing, what kind of a questions I can put on to the public, and that is how I decided my whole set of questions in my mind, and that is how I proceeded. But the first sort of a thing which I did was the secondary source of data, review of literature very much thoroughly, and then coming to the primary source of data and conducting a research in a very systematically, phase wise. Phase 1, deck study. Phase 2, collecting of the data. Third one, analyzing the data and doing it in a very framework.
That's very helpful, Neeraj, like especially the part that you utilize secondary sources of data which exist already to form the base for your primary research. So it's very helpful. Anything that you want to add to that, Akhila? A different take on it?
Yeah, I would just like to add that, secondary sources of data are what we look at, especially in global health policy. So there's something called systematic reviews. I think a few of the viewers might have heard of it, but it basically looks at all the papers in a particular time period, and then they look at trends, and they do an analysis, and they also present the research gap, as Neeraj mentioned. So it is easier to look at secondary sources than to get involved with primary data, because primary data usually it comes from intergovernmental organizations like World Bank or charities, and also sort of PhD level research. So it's a bit difficult to get involved in that as an undergraduate. So secondary research is usually much easier. And the way, again, we do it in our think tank is we publish reviews as well. So most of the output that we have are, we look at what has been done and we provide policy recommendations based on that. So it's all evidence based. It's not, not that we have come up with it just out of the blue. It's because we have looked at what has already been done. So as for undergraduates, I would say secondary research is probably easier for you to get involved in. But if you get a chance to, go on the ground data collection under supervision of a more senior researcher, then definitely take it, because that's more of a rare opportunity.
Yeah, most certainly. Maybe the final thing that I want to ask, but feel free to, be as descriptive as you want to be on this. Two things that two of the most common mistakes that maybe you have seen, notice people make as they try and build a career in this space, and two things that you would recommend that people, just as an advice, that people should do or take up again as they try and build a current policy research space. Either of you can go first, but it's something I'm personally also looking forward to hearing too. Maybe
Akhila, maybe you can start with.
Yeah, I can go for it. So I would say, generally, two mistakes. I will start with that. Is not being targeted enough with your approach. I think it again is sort of generalized recruitment advice. But when you apply for a position, it's very important to show your enthusiasm, because you don't have the experience, so you have to compensate for it with something else. So sometimes we get people who write very generic statements as to why they want to join, and it's very hard to the first, we receive hundreds and hundreds of applications, so it's important for you to distinguish yourself right from the start. And the second one would be around team working. So I've seen a few teams where people want, I know it's a space where people want to share their opinions and so on, but you need to always be mindful of what others have to say. So I mean, the think tank I work on is non-partisan, so we have people from across the political spectrum. So it's important to be respectful and engage. I've seen these two mistakes, and I think they're also if you turn it the other way around, it's also a piece of advice. But sort of moving on to the pieces of advice, I would say be proactive, look out for opportunities. The Indian policy space is booming these days. There are loads of fellowships to do, and there are loads of internship opportunities. So please do make use of it. Yeah. And I'm also going to put a little plug for my organization as well. So we are actively looking to recruit, an Indian founding team. So if you're interested in global health policy, you don't have to be a doctor, but if you have an interest in it, please do reach out to me, and we can set something up, because we are very, very passionate about including youth from the global south. It's just because it's headquartered in the UK, it shouldn't be just UK students driving it. So that's another thing. And the second piece of advice would be, it's not a one-day thing to get involved in policy research. You need to be doing it every now and then. You need to be up to date. And persist. I think I highlighted that earlier as well. So that would be the two pieces of advice from my side.
Okay, so my take on the kind of mistakes, I would say the first one would be interns wants to learn. They want to learn so many things just on having an internship of just 3 months. So that's not happening. You need to focus. You need to read every day what is happening, as I mentioned it earlier also. So, it cannot happen just in a day. Rightly, Akhila also mentioned this thing. So, mistake is, shifting from one think tank to another, then another, doing their internship, getting the experience. That is all right. You will get. But what is the, importance, what you have actually learned? They are actually missing out that thing. And that thing is, they are not having the proper understanding what exactly they are aiming for. So first of all, they need to think on their mind what exactly they want to do it with this kind of experience and working this and this internship. Yeah. Whether they are focused, if they want to work on the public policy as their future in the future, then they can go for it. They can actually, be a part of a think tank, any think tank for a longer period of time, just not for the sake of experience only. The second thing which I have seen, people are not candidates who are, getting involved in the public policy as a think tank. They are not very much open. They are hesitant of asking questions. They are asking of doubts, like with this person will might judge me, or this person, will make a fun of me. What kind of a silly question which I'm trying to ask. So I think, this thing they need to stop here, because I believe everyone of, with the same age group, they should, discuss more and with a very open heartedly, because, the thing will actually come into their head and heart that, actually they are learning something of it, and they need to open it. And this, the piece of advice I want to give is, first of all, which I already mentioned, that, from a journal particular information, they need to come to a specific specialization. They need to select one field where actually they want to work, because the journal information will just work till your post graduation. Otherwise, you will have to select one field where you want to be expert, you want to expertise yourself on that specific area, and you need to then read and write on that area only. Just do on that. Second thing, there are very, in point of view of India, there are very good institutions like IIT Bombay, Azim Premji University, TIS Mumbai. So these are few institutions which have come in a very, their education in the field of public policy and the development studies. They are giving a very good, focus on public policy area. As I've said, that it's a complex area, complex subject to understand. So if a student becomes a part of their PGDM program, or they do masters from these university, I think their knowledge will enhance, and actually they will, get a good exposure. What actually they want, they can work on the field where we just focused on the primary sources, how they can actually work on conducting of the research. So I believe, these are few of the things where they can work. And last thing I would just want to say that, where actually I'm a part of it, Raisina House, we are also focusing towards, public policy framework and international studies or political science. These are some of the 2-3 areas where this Raisina House is focused. So any intern who wish to join as a, remotely only on the basis, if they want to learn or explore these opportunities, they can obviously, mail us, and we can definitely work as a team.
This is very helpful, Neeraj, Akhila. I think we have a very good overview now of the policy research space, career options here, skills needed. I'm sure audience will find it helpful. For everyone who has tuned in, we will be linking both Neeraj and Akhila's LinkedIn profiles in the show notes. Feel free to look them up and reach out to them. I'm sure they'll be happy to help out. And if you have any queries and any questions, drop them in the comments. We'll make sure that it reaches them and they can get back to you. If you know of someone else that we should invite for our next conversation, let us know. Any subject, any topic you want us to cover, please let us know. All in the comments below. But thank you so much, Neeraj, Akhila, for taking out the time. Like, genuinely means a lot, and for having this conversation with us. And we'll keep you posted on this. So thank you again, and thank you for everyone who's tuned in.
Thank you, Yash. Thank you, Akhila.